but no one is ever filing habitability complaints because the framing is bad. It's all about the stuff that's on the outside, the exteriors, that's causing the leaks to come in, and they're not designed for heavy storm usage, essentially. And whenever we have heavy storms, there's always a flood of mold claims that are going to follow within 6 to 18 months of that time.
Welcome to CRE PN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals who work with investors, buyers, and sellers of commercial real estate coast to coast. Whether you're an investor, broker, lender, property manager, attorney, or accountant, we're here to learn from the experts.
Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio. Thanks for joining us. My name is J. Darren Gross. This is a podcast focused on commercial real estate investment and risk management strategies. Weekly, we have conversations with commercial real estate investors and professionals who provide their experience and insight to help you grow your real estate portfolio. Today's interview is sponsored by Building Insurance and Risk. When you invest in real estate, it pays to work with a real estate investor protection specialist to protect yourself and your investment from catastrophic loss. The experts at Building Insurance and Risk focus on real estate investor protection. They provide you with multiple insurance coverage offers and a side-by-side coverage comparison. To learn more, go to buildinginsurancerisk.com. Today, my guest is Niv Davidovich. Niv is the managing partner of Davidovich Stone Law Group, a landlord-centered law firm in California, providing a full slate of legal services to the landlord, property manager, and developer communities. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Niv Davidovich about landlord tenant law and related topics there. But first, a quick reminder, if you like our show, CRE PN Radio, there are a couple things you can do to help us out. You can like, share, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage you to leave a comment. We love to hear from our listeners. Also, if you want to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. And while you're there, please subscribe. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Niv Davidovich. Welcome to CRE PN Radio.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. But before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
So, like you said, I'm the managing partner of Davidovich Stone Law Group. I've been a lawyer for about 20 years now. Our law firm is focused on representing landlords, property managers, and developers in a full slate of all of their legal needs. So we have a very large eviction or unlawful detainer practice, and we also do a lot of civil litigation. That's going to entail defense of habitability claims, which are very much on the rise right now all across California, and also ADA claims, things about wrongful eviction or wrongful discrimination in the area of housing. ADA, we already said ADA claims, bed bugs, mold is a lot of what we do. And then sometimes just premises personal injury cases that we defend for landlords. We work with insurance companies who are insuring those landlords, and sometimes we get those cases just from the landlords themselves who are self-insured or just don't want to tender to insurance companies. And then we also handle transactional matters, and then we do litigation and transaction in the other real estate and construction related fields. So buyer-seller disputes, buyer-seller broker disputes, disputes with a contractor, architect, or engineer. So, and then we do administrative matters as well. So if the local housing department or the California Civil Rights Department gets a complaint about a landlord, we'll help the landlord respond to those issues. So in other words, it's a one-stop shop where a landlord or a property manager can feel like they're getting a holistic experience in terms of procuring their legal services.
Got it. So what you're saying is your phone never rings, and you guys are there's just playing a lot of solitaire there, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's a minefield out here.
Yeah.
We represent clients across California, but the main bulk of our practice is in Southern California. And so in Los Angeles, especially in Los Angeles County, the proliferation of tenant attorneys, uh, both the kind that are doing it for profit and the kind that are doing it for nonprofit, plus the proliferation of use of AI, has made legal disputes uh, mushroom, blow up, go nuclear, however you want to call it. But the number of disputes has increased dramatically. A lot of them are frivolous. A lot of them just don't make any sense, and they sort of give you I guess, an insider view of what it's like to be inside the mind of a person having a hallucinogenic experience. But uh, besides that fun uh, environment, there's just a lot of it. There's a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Well, sad but true. I'm curious if you were to guess on the percentage of uh, claims, or I say claims from an insurance standpoint, but from suits that you deal with. Is there a majority of the type of suits that you see? Can you identify? I mean, is it?
yes.
Well, can you say what it is? What is it?
Most of the claims that we get are almost all habitability related, which means that they have a complaint about something that's going wrong in their apartment or their house. Um, and then of those, the vast majority pertain to mold and vermin. So in other words, we're getting mold, cockroaches, rats and mice, things like that. And then sort of I would get, I would say it's more of a symptom of the underlying cause, and the underlying cause of that is usually plumbing issues. Sometimes we get, electrical issues or HVAC. Even rarer still are structural issues, but most of it is, except for where the structural issue actually, sorry, I'll take that back, where the structural issue is causing a leak. So either the plumbing or some sort of hole in the wall or a hole in the roof is causing a leak. The leak is causing mold. So that's the vast majority of what we get. And then that usually gets exacerbated if we go through a very heavy storm time. So the buildings in Los Angeles tend to be very old, the majority of them, and they have a reasonable life expectancy of about 50 years, and they're all 50 plus years beyond that life expectancy. They really weren't designed, especially the earlier workforce housing, to have lasted this long. And people are still living in them, and it's not easy to plug all the holes, essentially. Even if you do your roof every 20 years and do your stucco every 5 to 10 years, it's an old building. And there's not really a whole heck of a lot you could do about that. Might have, as they say, good bones, but no one is ever filing habitability complaints because the framing is bad. It's all about the stuff that's on the outside, the exteriors, that's causing the leaks to come in, and they're not designed for heavy storm usage, essentially. And whenever we have heavy storms, there's always a flood of mold claims that are going to follow within 6 to 18 months of that time.
It's interesting. I know the mold claims have proliferated from, I want to say probably like 30 years ago. I can remember there was like a 60 Minutes piece on a home, and it seemed to have to do with some of the airtight, energy efficient construction that was being done at the time. They didn't fully understand, exactly how to allow a home to breathe and also be energy efficient. It was basically, put a bag around the home and not allow the moisture to get out, and that was kind of one of the causes. And I think a
Yeah,
lot of the
that's the opposite.
construction has figured out how to build with allowing more airspace to allow the water to drain and not, create mold situations. However, having said that, I mean, what you're saying, like with the age of the buildings and also the plumbing. I know as an insurance broker, I'm constantly dealing with clients, and the questions are basically the four systems that the insurance companies always want to know about: roof, electric, heating, and plumbing. And each one of those has its own issues. And as you alluded to, the life expectancy, I think, there's plenty of buildings, I'm sure down in LA and I know up here in Portland where they're over 100 years old. However, the majority of the systems, they have a limited life expectancy. The framing might be sound, but those systems they're regularly in need of replacement.
Right.
And the sad thing is for a landlord is you can't charge more because the plumbing works. That's expected
Right.
to work and it's behind the walls. You can make it all pretty on the inside to where somebody goes ooh and ah, but if the plumbing doesn't work, you can't charge more because now it does work.
Nope.
And so it is kind of a challenge. So what's interesting to me, or I guess I wanted to touch on and ask you a little bit more about that. So with you mentioned storms. Is it primarily water coming in, or is it water not going where it's supposed to go that's causing that, or is it causing is it these vermin and et cetera are coming up through the plumbing when there's like excessive storms, or is it all the above, or is there a
I think the vermin, in terms of rats, that's coming through because there's holes in the exterior, and then they'll either chew through the drywall, or there's holes in the drywall. The rats and the mice are extremely good at what they do, and they know how to get in and out of places very easily. So that's really where the rats and the mice are coming from. In terms of the cockroaches, I think it's also smaller holes, but also there's just a lot of people who are very, very unsanitary. You can have one unsanitary person, a hoarder, and they're going to draw in a whole family of cockroaches. And it proliferates throughout the building very, very quickly.
right, right,
So that's generally where we get the roaches. The mold is coming either through a plumbing leak, which is happening either on the outside. So you will typically see that, in the kitchens, in the bathrooms, or it is some sort of a structural, like the storm is coming in through holes on the outside, getting into the walls, and then eventually it's getting so bad because you can't see it, you don't know that it's happening, and then it gets very, very bad on the inside, and then slowly seeps out to the inside, the outside of the inside of the wall, which is the inside of the apartment. And that's when we start to see and smell all the really bad mold cases. And so that's either, again, a leak or holes in the exterior, and the water is getting through, or it's just poorly maintained windows. So you don't have the caulking around the windows. A lot of the times, though, it's tenant caused. Sometimes we find evidence that they're doing it on purpose, just so that they can start a mold claim and then try and get some money, move to a different apartment, rinse and repeat.
yeah. And of those the claims we're talking about here, um, is there a percentage of those that get dismissed that you can, or is it they're all the way, they go all the way through and there's a
No.
judgment?
I mean, again, we were talking offline about risk. When you do a habitability claim and you're going into a jury trial, especially in Los Angeles, you're walking in already handicapped, because it's not like you're going to get a jury of your peers as a landlord. There's not a place where you're going to get 12 landlords on the jury, or even 12 homeowners. It's probably going to be a vast majority tenants. And of those nine or 10 tenants on your jury, a vast majority of those don't like their landlord for whatever reason, or their property manager. And so they're going to look at the landlord that's sitting there that has nothing to do with them and see their own landlord. So before anybody even opens their mouth, they just hear it's a landlord tenant dispute, you're already at risk. Now, we do a lot of jury trials in our evictions because we just don't have a choice. And we win a lot of them. We win the vast majority of them. But a lot of the time, that's because we can show that the tenant really is at fault. And so we overcome that handicap over the course of the trial. When you're doing a HAB case, it's a lot more difficult because you're on the defense. You're not on the offense. And if a trial lawyer is going to take a habitability case all the way through trial, it means they really believe in it because they're doing it on contingency. All of the tenant attorneys are on contingency, which means that they're taking a cut of whatever they make. If they make zero, they're going to get paid zero. So the smart ones will only take the cases that they know they have a very good chance of winning. Well, if they think that, and if they know that, it's because the case has problems in it for the landlord. And what sometimes people forget is that when you're dealing with a normal uh, tort situation, and torts are essentially things that you sue people for, which are not contracts and are not statutory violations. So it's everything else, negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, etc. When you're getting sued as a landlord in California, at least for habitability, you're not necessarily just getting sued for being negligent. You're getting sued for the breach of the warranty of habitability. That means it doesn't have to be your fault. It just means you didn't fix it. A warranty is very different than I was negligent in the manner in which I kept the apartment. That's what they sue you for as well. But it's really this warranty of habitability. So, in other words, even if I was doing everything I'm supposed to as a landlord, I owe the tenant a warranty to make sure that the unit is staying in a habitable way. And if I violate that warranty, that is what you can get sued for. So it's a little bit of a different standard than in the usual negligence cases. And so again, you are coming in with a far more difficult challenge in trying to win the case. In addition, there are certain kinds of cases where they can get attorney's fees. So that means even if they win just a little bit of money, the judge can award them a huge attorney's fees award. And so that gets baked into the risk as well. What ends up happening is that you really don't want to take habitability cases to jury trial unless you have some sort of outlier case where you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that whatever it is that this tenant is alleging is either completely false or they literally caused it. So, and it's just very rare. It doesn't happen very often. Ends up happening is we settle most of the cases.
Yeah, I was going to ask you on that. Just I know clients that have been through lawsuits and just I mean, A, the cost, but B, the time it takes to get through it and how disruptive it is to your life, and it's basically all consuming for the whole period of the trial through, discovery, the back and forth, and then as you build up to the court date, and then if there's a judgment against you, I mean, it can be quite ugly. Um, so, I mean, so basically, you painted the picture that as a landlord, you are the enemy number one. Uh, I mean, you're basically you've got your pictures at the post office, most wanted kind of situation as far as the courts and the tenants and the representatives that represent the tenants. Uh, they've got an edge.
Yeah, you have to you have to take into account the political atmosphere that we're dealing with here in California. And this is, I'm sure your listeners are coming from a nationwide audience. And so this may be very different in different parts of the country. But in California, we have um, it's a very, very democratic state. And in Los Angeles County specifically, you have there's a general political atmosphere which is very much against landlords and painting landlords to be these evil oligarchs who are, eating filet mignon and lobster on the back of the workers. So it's obviously a completely false narrative, especially when it comes to mom and pop landlords who are just also just trying to make a living. Their living happens to be owning apartment units. There's a lot of them that are not these, very large multinational corporations or, billion-dollar corporations. They're just literally just trying to run their small business. But it doesn't matter. They all get painted with the same brush. And that political atmosphere bleeds into the jury pool. It's impossible for it not to happen. So you just have to take that into account.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious. we've talked a little bit about the age of the properties. We've hinted at insurance. I know in my practice, the insurability of properties based on the age and just the marketplace is constricted. And the carriers that are willing to insure older properties is considerably less than the brand new properties, just based on all the concerns of older properties, et cetera. Having said that, I'm curious, do you find that most of the defense that you provide is paid for? I mean, are the insurance companies um, there to ride, with their client to the settlement, or are you finding more and more companies are pulling back on some of the coverage that you historically have had access to for your clients?
Well, famously, there are a lot of very large insurance companies who have pulled out of providing any sort of coverage, whether it's habitability or even just general property coverage in California. So that was a big story, and I think everyone sort of was aware of that. In addition, it's become fairly common for insurers who are going to write those policies to have habitability exclusions altogether. For the ones that are still including habitability, they'll include a biologicals exemption. So they will exclude any cases, they'll cover you for habitability, but they'll exclude any issues that pertain to mold, vermin, anything that's alive, roaches, rats, mice, all the stuff that we talked about, and includes the mold. So that definitely limits the insurability of a lot of these claims. And so that's why we end up defending a lot of them, a lot of them privately, unfortunately. And then there are also just the issues where a landlord may have already had a bunch of claims. They don't want to risk losing their insurance or having their premiums skyrocket to a point where it's just not affordable anymore. And so they'll just bite the bullet and not tender it, even though they have insurance. So
Right.
it really depends on how big the claim is, what the status is with the particular landlord's insurance, whether they think they can replace the insurance if it gets canceled. So as all these factors get baked in, and that's how you decide, number one, if you're going to tender, and then if you're once you tender, whether or not you're going to get coverage. Sometimes a claim may be half covered and half not covered, which means they'll provide the defense, but they're not going to pony up all the money for the settlement. How much they'll pony up kind of depends on how much the claim is covered. And then also there's the time on risk. A lot of the times the tenant has been there for 3 or 4 years, 10 years or 20 years. They can only sue you for a maximum, depending on the cause of action, but it's usually about 4 years worth of stuff. But if you've had four different insurance companies over the course of that time, you're going to tender it to all four of them. And now all four of them are going to be involved. And then maybe one or two say, no, you're not covered. And the other two will say you are covered.
Yeah. Now it gets a little messy.
Yeah.
Um, Curious on the percent of the claims that you handle for your clients. Do you have a sense? Can you ballpark a percent of claims that the carriers are providing a defense or participating in the?
Hard for me to say because a lot of the times, so we're panel counsel for a really great insurance company called CIG. And when they give me the cases, it's because they've already done the analysis and
Right.
decided that they owe a defense. So the only times I see them are after they've already included them. So it's hard for me to give a percentage because I don't know how many they're denying.
Right. Right. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. No, I just know that it's the whole mold thing is very frustrating
Yes.
um, from all sides. I mean, I don't think any tenant. I mean, like you said, there are those that make it a practice of creating problems and that. But I would say that they've got to. I'm assuming they're in the minority. Uh, it's not the majority of clients that create that. But I'm assuming that the ones that are presented. Um, there must be some sort of a substance to what's being alleged. Otherwise, it wouldn't. No, I mean, is it
It
you're saying? Yeah,
depends.
yeah,
It depends. Sometimes I see cases that are very legitimate. We'll start with the discovery, and then it'll be pictures and videos of just stuff that no one would want to live in.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah,
if
yeah.
if if we're going to be objective about it, when you have a picture of four dead mice around a trap,
Right, right. No,
you could be a landlord advocate all day. No one wants to live with that.
right,
But we also have a lot of situations where they'll say, "Oh, it's mold. Do you have a mold test?" No. How do you know it's mold? It looks like black on the wall. It turns out, it's like a Sharpie that the kid.
right,
It's
right.
and I'm telling you, I had a situation where it was a very, very good landlord who really took care of their building. And they did all of these. There was mold that was coming around a bedroom window. They did all of these tests to try and figure out how was their moisture coming in, and no one can figure it out. Fundamentally, it just came down Occam's razor. I think the lady was just pouring water on the carpet. Simple as that. You can cause your own mold.
She calls it, yeah.
You
Um,
want close all the you want to cause mold? Very easy. Go to the bathroom, close all the vents, don't open the windows, leave all your moldy towels in there. You'll have mold. You'll,
instantly,
you'll
yeah.
leak,
Yep, yep, yep,
right?
yep.
You could do the same thing to your clothes and then take pictures. It's not that hard to manufacture a mold case.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's sad that that's the case. But so I guess my question to you for the landlords, um, what is the best way to, you know, not to defend, but just to create a situation where there's not an issue? I mean, how do you advise your clients to navigate being a landlord? Uh, you know, or is there any kind of you know, a view from your situation on how to prevent it, or is it more a matter like you're strictly dealing with the situation once it's become a problem?
No, we certainly have advice on how to at least minimize and mitigate the risks and the damages. Number one, you want to have a system where you're forcing the tenants to make all of their complaints through an online system. And what this does is it maintains a written record of all the complaints so that you can maintain a written record of A, the response and the response time and what happened in the response. But B, it also creates a written record of what was not told. So, in other words, if you have a system where you say, we do not take any maintenance requests by phone, by text, by email, in person, nothing. If you have a maintenance request, you must put it through the system, whether it's AppFolio or whatever it is that you're using. That funnel makes it so that you can legitimately say that, look, we do all of our maintenance requests through the AppFolio portal. And look, you never made a request. You never even told us about this. As soon as we found out about it in your lawsuit, we went and fixed it. So that's a powerful defense. But again, that has to be true. So if you're allowing people to do all their maintenance requests through texting the maintenance man or making phone calls, they'll always just say, "Oh, well, I called you about it and you didn't come." And it's not good enough anymore, I think, for tenants to say, "I'm not good at computers."
Right.
That's like driving the horse and buggy around right now because like I don't want to learn to drive a car. Like you got to get with the times.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to use a computer, you got a son or a daughter or a nephew or a niece that does. So even though we have to offer by law at least one means of paying rent that is not electronic, there is no requirement that we offer means of making maintenance complaints, which are not electronic. And so I highly suggest that get an AppFolio account, you move all your maintenance requests through there. Now you have good records. Those records are really, really key. And that's number one. Number two is respond to the maintenance requests and make sure you have some sort of a record of what you're doing. So even if you can't do the AppFolio thing, even if it's you're doing the maintenance requests by phone or email, if you're going to go and respond, make sure you have a record of how you did that. Some sort of an invoice, some sort of a written documentation, emails, text, whatever, something that says you actually went there and did something. That's also very powerful. And then when you're doing that, make sure you're taking photos and videos. You really don't want to have a situation where the only person with the photo and video evidence is the tenant, but we as the landlord don't have anything to contradict that. Really, the photos and the videos, I think, make or break these cases. So it's when people say that, pictures 1,000 words, it's not true. A picture's 10,000 words, and a video is literally 10,000 pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's sad and true that seeing is believing, and if you don't have something that supports your position, it's pretty tough
Yeah,
sometimes to overcome. Um, with the what was I going to ask you? So basically, you're saying funnel it all through the electronic and then respond. Um, is there any kind of a frequency of inspections that you recommend that landlords or managers engage in to, because you mentioned somebody's lived there 4 years and all of a sudden now there's the problem or the penalty escalates because of the time spent there. I'm curious, does any kind of a periodic inspection where you're having agreement between the tenant and the property manager that everything's good, that there's some sort of a visual inspection and everything checks out or like at a lease renewal, is there any kind of chance
it's
to,
not it's not really done, technically
no?
speaking. If they
Okay.
don't want to let you in for that, they really don't have to.
Sure.
They have to let you in. The law is that they have to let you in to make necessary repairs or agreed upon repairs. That will include investigating it. So in other words, if they call you and say, "Hey, there's a problem in my unit, the lights don't work, HVAC doesn't work," you can go in there, twice or however many times it takes to first inspect it and then come back with the actual maintenance people to make the repairs. There really isn't a provision, to be honest with you, that allows you to do an annual inspection just to go in, look around. So generally, that'll be done during the unit term. It's because it's not really authorized, it's not necessarily something you're expected to do. Because if they say, "Hey, how come you didn't do your annual inspection?" It's like, because the annual inspections are sort of a customary made up thing. A lot of the times the tenants are more than happy to let you in to do it, and the normal tenants want you to come do it. So of course they'll let you in. And it's their opportunity to come and complain to you about all of the little ticky-tacky things that they just sort of are too lazy to go online and report to you. But now that you're here, we'll tell you about it. So some people do it, some people don't. It's not necessarily required, and it's not negligence not to do it.
Right. No, I was gonna say, I typically find on the properties I own that it's usually when you pass on the rent increase for next year, that's when all the, hey, what about this? I mean, the repair list
Right,
gets presented,
exactly.
um, it's all part of it. But
Yep.
um, so from where you are, situated, and we've kind of described the just the uphill battle for landlords as far as the courts are concerned, and the just the public view of the situation. Um, is there do you see it getting better, or do you see anything like is there anything that potentially could uh, strengthen the position of the landlord with respects to the current situation, or do you think it's just the winds are against the landlord right now?
It's going to get, I think, a little bit worse, and then it's going to get a lot better. Here's the evidence I have for that. So we have have you ever heard, I'm sure they have this in Oregon. You ever heard of the DSA, Democratic
DS.
Social,
Oh,
Democratic Socialists of America?
yeah. Okay.
Comrade Mamdani being their
Yeah.
current
Yeah.
leader. Okay. So there are four DSA people on the LA City Council. out of 15. Um, One of them is this Nitya Raman. Okay. Now she decided now to run for mayor. Her big push for mayor is that she wants to build a lot more affordable housing. And so now she's passing herself off as this big pro housing development person, even though a lot of the votes that she took were completely against landlords and developers. But now she's understanding that, oh, maybe vilifying all the people that we are asking to build all the housing that we are missing isn't such a good idea. And so she's sort of turned. Now, whether or not that's just a way of getting elected mayor and then she'll turn back on the landlords and developers after that, yeah, I see that happening very easily. But the nice thing about stupid communist and socialist promises is that A, they're all lies, and B, they don't work. So people will eventually see that there's no point in risking my life to leave one of these communist countries just to come to a place that's trying to make itself into one of those places like I just left. I could have just stayed at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and again, all of these policies of taking away police and taking away services and allowing everyone to just have a restaurant on the street. The people who live here don't want to live in a place like that. And eventually it's going to get so bad that even the people funding those types of candidates are going to say, nah, we're not having it
Enough.
anymore. And that's
Yeah.
what happened in San Francisco. So San Francisco, we know, is this hotbed of socialist, communist type thinking. But when you're walking around on the street with your kids and you have to dodge the human feces on the one side and then dodge the needles on the other side, all of a sudden everyone said, you know what, this isn't so fun. I don't like this so much. And especially a lot of the tech guys said, nope, that's it. We're done. We're going to take back our city. They elected a normal mayor. They elected a normal district attorney. They elected some normal people for their council. And what do you know? The city turned around and they cleaned it up. And they're in the process of cleaning it up, which means that A, it's possible, and B, there's a public appetite for it. The thing that I really love about the American system, no matter where it is in the country, is that they're typically self-correcting of extremes. Once it goes way too much to one side or the other, people will typically pull it back and say, that's not who we are. We like to be in a happy medium. And so right now, I think Los Angeles is getting towards that extreme that they had in San Francisco, where the regular, normal, silent majority of people are saying, this doesn't work for us. Just do what you're supposed to do. Criminals in jail, dirt off the street. If we're missing housing, let people build housing. This doesn't require an advanced degree to figure out.
Yep. Economics 101, supply and demand. It all makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And no, it is kind of a, you describe the extremes on either end, and I've always kind of agreed that we kind of tack through the middle. I mean, we're always headed in one direction or the other, and it's most enjoyable when we're in the middle, but it seems like never are the political winds comfortable just being in the middle. So seems like there's always an extreme, one way or another kind of thing. But well, anyway, I guess stay tuned, and hopefully we'll get some more reasonable, you know, views on the
Yeah.
situation. And it's interesting because I know, like, up here in Portland, we've got what is it, rent control that they've instituted, and it's not, well, it's always frustrating when you have change and you have new rules that apply that didn't apply before, that probably don't really need to be from the standpoint, because there's the the sense that the solution is going to fix everything, when in reality, all it does is it turns off, additional builders coming in to build, because what you need is more supply. I mean, a
Right.
lot of it's usually a supply issue that creates the problems. It's not the evil landlord that's trying to raise rents just so they can be fat and happy. It's more a matter of a have to, based on the economics in place. If there's a limited supply, the property commands a higher price to purchase, which requires a bigger mortgage, which requires more, rent to pay that, and and also it's what the market, if there's more supply, look at any market. When there's an excess of supply, the price corrects.
Right.
And so if you want to fix if you want to control the rent, increase the supply, and you will, watch what happens. And
Correct.
you know,
And when the city tries to increase the supply, because of the laws, what happens when a city engages in construction, they have to pay what's called prevailing wage.
right,
And now, like electricians and plumbers are charging a higher hourly rate than lawyers. It's preposterous. So
right,
of course that doesn't make any sense, and they're not going to change that. So if you want more supply, you have to incentivize the private developers to do that. Now, a lot of the thing is that, especially in the more dense parts of the city, land is very scarce. So it means we're going to have to take old, decrepit buildings, the kinds that are resulting in habitability claims, and demolish them. And that means we're going to have to move some people around. But there is this notion among people who have stayed in an apartment for 20 years that that apartment now belongs to them because they've been there a really long time, even though they're paying rent from 20 years ago. And
yeah,
this notion of entitlement that I didn't pay the mortgage, I didn't pay the taxes, I didn't maintain the building. I just lived here with my family for 20 years. Now it's mine, and you shouldn't be able to take it away from me. It's nonsense. It's legally nonsense. It's morally nonsense. It's not yours. You borrowed it.
right.
Yeah, you've been borrowing it for a really long time, but you borrowed it. You never bought it. You never took the risk on to be the owner of it. So you don't get to just stay there forever. And that is what's required. You have to have a little bit of disruption in order to be able to make more housing. But what did they
Yeah.
do? The state came in and made laws that said if you have a rent control building that you're demolishing, or not a rent control building, but any building with low income people in it, you're going to have to pay these outrageous sums in order to get them to vacate. And so it went from paying 10 to 26,000 to in certain circumstances paying anywhere from 88 to $120,000 per unit to try and vacate a property right now. What developer is going to add on a 10 unit demolition? What developer is going to add a $1.2 million line item out of their pocket?
You can't. I mean, you basically, fundamentally, the people that are putting these rules in place don't understand,
No.
how it works. I see it all the time up here in Portland too. Is they pass all these new rules. I think right now they're trying to tax landlords for having vacancies. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, how? No, wait, what? How's that going to fix the problem? How are, And it basically, I mean, you know, fundamentally they have a problem because they have lack of revenue. The tax base has moved out, or there's been kind of a reset with downtown, with more of the office. And there's buildings here that there's one in particular that sold last time, I think in 2020, maybe 2019, for like 330 million, and just sold for 43 million. An office
At
building.
an office building?
Yeah,
Yeah.
major office building.
Same thing
And
happened. Same thing happening here in downtown LA. The
yeah,
office values are just completely crazy.
and the only thing that I look to, and I think I think it's a logical conclusion, is that as these prices kind of reset the marketplace, that will allow these new landlords to charge a more attractive rent, that will attract, people that want to be in a downtown, because I think ultimately there's value to having to being in a hustle bustle kind of a, being amongst people, as opposed to being
Right.
just isolating. And so I think that it'll take a little bit of time, but I think that at least the ground is being, set so that that can occur. It's painful if you're the one that's selling for, you bought it for a three, you're selling at a pennies on the dollar kind of a discount. But just just a reset and, get some activity that'll attract more activity. And I'm assuming that that will give way to more activity that will allow for more building of, like the housing and that, but it's going to take a while, and it's not an overnight. But again, kind of point to some signs, like you were saying, some of the political winds that are blowing, and perhaps maybe some of the market winds will help that as well. But we'll see.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey Niv, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here for a second. As I
Hmm.
mentioned before, by day I'm an insurance broker. And as such, I work with my clients to assess risk and determine what to do with the risk. And there's three strategies we typically consider. We first look to see if we can avoid the risk. If that's not an option, we look to see if we can minimize the risk. And if we're not able to avoid nor minimize, we look to see if we can transfer the risk. And that's what an insurance policy is. It's a risk transfer vehicle.
Right.
And as such, I like to ask my guests if they can look at their own situation. Could be your clients, the legal climate, the political climate, whatever it is that you identify and consider to be the biggest risk. And again, for clarification, while I'm an insurance broker, I'm not necessarily looking for an insurance related answer.
Hmm.
And so if you're willing, I'd like to ask you, Niv Davidovich, I'm sorry, I want to say it's
Davidovich, it's fine.
Davidovich, what
Um,
is the biggest risk?
in being a real estate owner,
However you wanted to, it's up to you to define what you consider to be the biggest risk.
I guess I'm somewhat tainted because the things that I deal with are either the expensive evictions or the expensive or difficult habitability claims. So to me, I'm always going to see that as the potential risk. I can't really necessarily speak to market conditions, because I think the people who bought the offices in 2019, they never thought that their Class A landmark buildings are going to crater in price by two-thirds. But obviously, having a global, pandemic, it's just not something put on your pro forma. So that's probably the biggest risk, but it's probably going to happen the least amount of times. In terms of regular risk, it can be these lawsuits because it's very easy for the tenants to find uh, tenant attorneys who are going to file them on contingency. And there's a proliferation of these types of attorneys happening in California. And I'll explain why. Uh, Personal injury, uh, even though it is viewed as, oh, those are the ambulance chasers and sort of like the low class attorneys, they're making way more money than a lot of these even white shoe lawyers. So the barrier to entry to get into personal injury is so high now because they're spending so much money on advertising and marketing. I'm talking about some of the big boys are spending millions of dollars, millions plural of dollars every month, not year, month. And that's because there's just a lot of money there. But in order to keep up with them, you need to spend that much money. If you can't, well, I'll move on to a different area where I can also make similar money. So they moved into employment. Well, now there's people spending all of that money in employment law. Also, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars every single month to get these employment claims because in California, get a good employment claim, you can really hit it big. So that barrier to entry became very big. And so they moved on to the next thing, which is the tenant habitability claims, where you can also potentially hit it big. Now, it's not as big as the PI and it's not really as big as the employment, but lower barrier of entry as well. And so all these new lawyers who are coming out of law school every year that are more entrepreneurial and business minded, they need an area to get into that they can just open their shingle and just start doing it. And happens to be that habitability is something they can do. So that's happening a lot more. And if you don't have the proper insurance, you have one claim, it can kill you.
Yeah, no, literally, the an uncovered claim that you get a judgment on or something like that that can really upset your plans. So
Right.
that's good. Hey, Niv, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more or connect with you?
So we have our website, which is davidovichlaw.com. That's DAVIDOVICHLAW.com. And from there in the top right, you can see all of our different socials. So I speak on a lot of these podcasts. I speak at a lot of real estate brokerages and other sorts of events. And we have clips and longer videos from all of that on our YouTube. And we also uh, on our LinkedIn and Facebook and all the other different socials that are available there. You can see more of us. And then on our website, if you are in need of any legal services anywhere in the state of California, you can give us a call or an email. And the phone number is 818-661-2420. You can reach me by email, Niv, N-I-V, Nancy Isaac Victor, at davidovichlaw.com.
Well, Niv Davidovich, I can't say thanks enough for taking the time to talk.
Well, thanks for having me.
I have enjoyed it and learned a lot.
Great.
And I look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Darren.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CRE PN Radio.
You're listening to CRE PN Radio for influential commercial real estate professionals. For more information on this or any of our guests, like us on Facebook, CRE PN Radio.